Okay, good morning everyone. Good afternoon. Kalit salah ni. So today we are doing chapter 8, rotation. Yep. Kenapa? Okay ke? Is everyone okay? Sempat makan tak? Dah. Baik. Good.
Tengah makan, doktor.
Okay, tak apa. Teruskan makan tapi mata tengok screen. Okay. So we are doing chapter 8, rotation of rigid bodies. So last
Doktor,
time, yep.
doktor record ke?
Belum. Kejap. Yes, I'm recording. Yes, I am. Thank you. Okay, so we are doing, Okay, so torque over force, and we have several subtopics, torque over force, equilibrium of a rigid body. Okay, sama juga, last time we had net equals to F, apa saya bunyi ni? Net force equals to 0, right? And this we set as ya Allah. Are you guys reading that? Korang nampak ke text messages saya keluar? Tak nampak Mesti nampak. Okay, tak apa. So when net force equals to 0, so it is in equilibrium. Right? Sama juga when we have when torque equals to 0, it is in equilibrium. So I'm just putting this out there, don't worry yet. So just nak cerita je in general. So when we don't have motion going to the right or to the left, no acceleration to the right or to the left, no acceleration going upwards, you only have gravity, then your object has a net force of 0 sebab tak ada acceleration, right? Because force equals to ma. Sama juga macam rotating body. When there's no acceleration clockwise, there's no acceleration anti-clockwise. So torque equals to 0. So in the angular quantity world, torque is equivalent to force. Okay, kalau dalam linear, kita cakap force. In the angular quantity world, we refer this as torque. Okay, so what is torque? Let's talk about torque in more detail. So after completing this chapter, you must be able to define and calculate torque, solve problems on equilibrium, solve problems on kinematics of rotational motion, and solve the dynamics of rotational motion. Don't worry, we'll talk more on that. Okay, what causes a rotational motion? So here, this is a top view of a door. Okay, so this is your door. Okay, imagine you are from the top. So, yang ni angsel dia. Sini angsel. Okay, angsel in English is called hinge. Okay, the reason I know angsel pun because I asked K13. So that is your hinge. When you push or tarik the door, when you push or pull the door, what happens is at this point it rotates, right? So this is your axis of rotation. Because why? This part does not move, but the rest of the object, the rest of the door moves. This part of the angsel of the hinge does not move. It is the axis of rotation, right? So this is your axis of rotation, and this is your door. Okay, this is me. I am pushing with a force of Fa. I push, so this is my hand, right? I push. So at this point, the length from the axis of rotation is how long is my door? I think it's 1 meter. So the length to the axis of rotation is 1 meter. Okay, so I am applying force A with length of 1 meter from the axis of rotation. So bila saya nak tarik tutup pintu, senang je kan? So it's easy. So the rotational motion is easy to achieve. However, satu hari tu saya mengada-ngada, I don't want to use the knob. I want to push the door at the center of the door. So, okay, ni tak berapa nak center lah. So let's say this, from the axis of rotation, the length is 0.3 meter, right? So I push, I apply force B, and the length to the axis of rotation is 0.3. So this is FB and the length is 0.3 meter. Okay, so if I apply equal force, let's say equal force of 10 Newton, FA and FB are both 10 Newton, I will have achieved torque of 10 Newton per 10 Newton meter. And if I push at point B, a force of 10 Newton, I will have achieved a torque of 3 Newton meter. So here, the torque is larger and at this point, the torque is smaller sebab susah nak tolak. So, to achieve the same amount of rotational motion, kita kena assume torque is equal. Sebab saya nak tolak pintu ni pada kadar yang sama lah, pada acceleration yang sama. So, in that case, my torque for both situations, saya nak samakan. So, let's say my torque is, I want my torque to be 15. Okay, I want my torque to be 15 Newton meter. If I push over here, I need my force to be 15 divided by 1. I need my force to be 15 Newton because my length from the axis of rotation is 1 meter. And if I want my torque to be 15 Newton meter, but I push it at this point, so 15 Newton meter equals to, I don't know what my Newton should be yet. I know the length should be 0.3 meter. So 15 divided by 0.3 is berapa? 15 divided by 0.3 is 50 Newton. So now, just to achieve the same torque, I have to apply more force. So if you want to try, you can try pushing your door dekat tombol punya area. Dengan pushing your door dekat tengah-tengah. Kat tengah-tengah lagi susah kan? So you have to push lagi banyak. Kita kena pakai lagi banyak force. So that is why your door has the knob at the end. Because why? They want to extend the length from the axis of rotation so that you use minimal force to push the door. This is related to torque. What is torque? Torque is the length from the axis of rotation, which is R. It's called R. The length from the axis of rotation, they call it moment arm. Moment arm. Or another term that they can use is radius. Because why? This thing moves macam circular motion juga kan. They can also call it radius. They can also call it moment of arm. They can also call it the length from the axis of rotation. It just means R. Okay, so torque is given by this symbol, tau. It's a vector. It's a vector and it is a product of the length from the axis of rotation times the force that you apply. Now, remember we have work done previously. Work done was the dot product of force and displacement. What does the dot product mean? It means that the force has to be in parallel with displacement or the displacement has to be in parallel with force. And how do you find a parallel component? F cosine theta G, right? Do you guys still remember about this one? We have a force, we want to push the object. The only force that matters for work done is the parallel force. Ingat lagi tak? Ingat dah? Ingat dah? Okay, so for work done, you had the equation, the dot product of force and displacement. But for this guy over here, torque is the cross product of R and F. Cross product means perpendicular. Okay, tadi dot product kan, dot product is parallel. Kita nak parallel force with displacement. But this time we want our force to be perpendicular to the moment arm. We want our force to be perpendicular to moment arm. Do not use this equation sesuka hati. Because why? Sometimes sometimes they give you the angle over here. If that's the case, the F perpendicular becomes F cosine theta 1. If they give you an angle over here, then yes, it becomes F sine theta 1. What is important to know here, you need to resolve your F to be perpendicular to R. Okay, resolve your F to be perpendicular to R. Do not use RF sine theta. Just remember that you need R and F to be perpendicular. That should be your equation. Okay, and it is a vector, so it has direction. The direction is either it's clockwise or anti-clockwise. Okay, so let's take a look at this guy. Where is it going? Okay, so I push a force. The only force that I am interested in for torque is the perpendicular component. So this, hello, kenapa nak saving pula ni? Okay, so this is the force that I am interested in. This is my F perpendicular, right? Sorry, nak batuk ya. Okay, so now you guys look at my video. Okay, look at me right now. Don't look at the slide, look at me. Okay, let me besarkan kejap. Okay, so I am trying to imitate the diagram in the slide. So this is my beam, the wooden beam. The axis of rotation is given by my finger. So it rotates about this point. This is my axis of rotation, right? Okay, so if I apply a force, kejap, dekat saya gatal. If I apply a force in this direction, okay, look at my finger, in this direction, I am pushing the wood in this way. Okay, walaupun force saya ke atas, but I am actually, it goes like that, right? So it goes like that. So it is going anti-clockwise, berlawan dengan arah jam. If my force is going downwards, I apply it like this, and it's going clockwise, menuju ke arah, mengikut arah jam. Okay, but for this particular example, look back at the slide. For this particular example, it is pushing up, so it is moving counterclockwise. Okay, let me use blue. So it's moving like that. Korang bayangkanlah gambar saya buruk. So it is moving counterclockwise. Counterclockwise. That is how you spell it. Okay. Torque that is moving counterclockwise is positive. And something that is moving in clockwise direction is negative. So terbalik ikut arah jam negatif, ikut lawan jam positif. So the torque for this beam is positive. The torque, okay. Any questions so far? Is everyone okay? Okay, good. Okay, I'm going to move on. Okay, so we discussed this already. The rotational motion is due to the perpendicular component of the force only. It doesn't care about the parallel component. Okay, it doesn't contribute to torque. Okay, so the magnitude of torque is also called moment of the force. Tadi kita punya R was called moments of arm. Arm. So torque, the magnitude of torque is called moment of the force. Pun boleh. Okay, so you can call it torque, you can call it moment of force, but moment of force only gives you the magnitude. Okay, so why do we want, why do we want F to be perpendicular? Because we want a force that is tangential to the circular motion. So this is our circular motion. This is our door, right? Kalau kita tolak sampai hujung, it is actually a circular motion. And we want to know what is the tangential component, tangential force of the force that is applied to the door. Okay. Itu je. Okay, so let me skip the name. The perpendicular distance from the axis of rotation to the line along the force which the force X is called the lever arm. Okay, tadi saya bagi tahu moment of arm. This is another name for it, moment arm. Lever arm. Tak tahulah kenapa nak banyak-banyak nama. Memang macam ni. Sekejap, tadi mana saya tulis moment arm. Okay, so this is also called lever arm length to axis of rotation. Okay, going back to that slide again. Okay, so here, as you see, kalau kita pakai benda alah ni, what do you call it? I don't know, but it's something like spanner, right? Just spanner. If you put your hand over here, it is hard to move it. You need more force to unscrew something or, you know, do whatever job that you need to do. When you put your hand in the center point of this object, it becomes hard. If you put it to the furthest point away from the axis of rotation, it becomes easier. So this is because we are dealing with torque, and torque becomes greater when your R is greater. So kita selalu nak R yang besar untuk get a greater torque, to get a greater rotational motion. So that is what we want. Rotational. Okay, so that is what we want. Kita nak buat rotation. So kita nak yang paling besar. So we want our R to be extra big. So kalau benda alah ni is lagi panjang, I would tell you, put your hand over here. Go as far as you can to make your torque punya F the greatest. Okay, so that your torque is great. So that you don't have to apply too much force. Okay, so a longer lever arm is very helpful in rotating objects. Okay.
Doktor, saya nak tanya. Kan macam tadi kan, contohnya kalau macam ni, so dia punya F tu dia include dengan gravitational sekali ke?
Tak, tu F yang kita apply. Kita nak
so kalau dia ada gravity dia tak effect lah.
Effect, but kita nak kira torque yang kita perlukan untuk kita rotate benda ni. So kita nak tahu force kita apply je dulu. Tapi memang betul, nanti kena tengok mg dia. Contohnya macam ni. So for this particular equilibrium problem, the mg is taken note of. This is your mg. Okay. Kat sini, your mg is important because everything needs to be in equilibrium. So yes, mg is important. But here, saya tak nak tahu dia equilibrium. Saya nak apply force berapa. Kat sini, mana pergi? Kat sini saya nak tahu berapa force yang saya perlukan untuk produce torque. So kat sini, I don't care about the mass of the lever. I just want to know how much force do I need to apply to get a certain torque. Because it's not in equilibrium. Kita akan tengok problem yang ada mg. Does that make sense? Ni nak kira torque je, bukan equilibrium.
Okay, thank you, Doktor.
Alright.
Dr. Nat,
Yep.
when we consider the weight acting also, then we take F net to be F applied.
We have net torque. Nanti kita belajar net torque. Time tu baru kita tengok semua forces acting on this object. But right now, I just want to know what is the torque when I push this lever arm. Itu je. It's not net, bukan net. Okay, saya lupa nak highlight.
Then kalau soalan, if we don't put weight in, then we consider we only look at the applied force.
Yeah, betul.
Kan?
I just want to know what is the torque applied here. Betul. Excuse me. Okay, again, I'm going to repeat myself untuk orang yang tak faham tadi soalan tu. Your friend asked, what about the force? But what about the force of the weight of this object? So this object has weight, right? So the weight is this way, mg. However, I'm not talking about net torque. I'm talking about the torque at this particular position. And the torque at that particular position is the force applied, and the R is from here to the axis of rotation. So that is your R, and this is your F applied. So your torque is F applied, APP, tak nampak pula dah, and R. Okay, so dua-dua ni dah perpendicular, so let's just, it's just multiplication. Okay, so that is torque. However, if I ask you what is the net torque of this object, then you have to consider all the forces acting. So this one. So now you have to resolve it to become perpendicular. Perpendicular. Mg, that is perpendicular. So this is mg, right? It's mg. You have to know what the angle is, and applied force. Okay, so how would you do that? So what is the R for this dude? The R is, let's say, hello, kenapa tak bergerak? Sekejap PowerPoint ni dia dengki. Okay, so that is your R1. And what is the R for your center of mass? Okay, I don't know as well. So that is your R2. From the axis of rotation, saya salah tulis. Axis of rotation is here. So that is your R1. And this is your R2. Yep. So now, if that's the case, you have net torque is equal to torque 1 plus torque 2. What is torque 1? What is torque 2? Torque 1 is R1F, it's F applied. And torque 2 is R2 mg, that is perpendicular, the perpendicular component of mg to the lever arm. Now, so one thing that we didn't discuss yet here is I labeled mg over here, which is at the center of mass. So for torque punya problem, when they give you the mass and you want to label the force, which is the weight, you put the weight at the center of the object, which is the center of mass. Okay? Okay, good question. Nanti kita sambung lagi pasal net ni.
Dr. Nat?
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting, Doctor. But you put two torques, torque 1 and torque 2, because F applied acts at when radius 1 and then mg acts at radius 2, is it?
Yeah.
So if, let's say there's a third force at radius 3, so we also have to consider a torque 3.
Yep, correct.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay. Okay, so next one, we have torque net, the total torque on an object. Kita baik tengok ini, tengok this seesaw. So here, what is the force applied on this beam? So if I'm sitting on this beam, my weight is, let's say, 50 kilograms. So the force is 9.81 times 50. Let's say this is bell. I don't know how much bell weighs. Maybe 55. Maybe not. 9.81.
So kind, Doctor.
Huh? So kind. And then there's your other classmate, 9.45, 9.81. Then the factors of you guys, I don't know who, is 57.
Me, I'm Faris.
Siapa?
Faiz.
Kesian dia korang ni.
I said it.
Oh, you said it. Okay. Okay, that's good. You're confident. Okay.
Faiz suka jongkak-jongkit.
Siapa suka jongkak-jongkit? Faiz.
Faiz.
Me.
Why? Why do you like
Let me.
Okay, fine. Okay. Please continue liking jongkak-jongkit. Okay, lepas tu, now we have different radiuses for each people, right? So my radius from the axis of rotation, which is over here, that's my axis of rotation. Because why? If I have a jongkak-jongkit, the only place that it doesn't move is at the center. The only place that it doesn't move is at the center. The jongkak-jongkit, jongkak-jongkit. These two ends move, but this center point does not. So that means it's the axis of rotation. So now, ni siapa tadi? Forgot. Is it Belle? Oh no, it's a classmate yang petite. So this girl has, from the axis of rotation, she is 10 centimeter, and then Belle is 20 centimeter, and I am 30 centimeter. So we all have different R's. Okay, and Faiz has 30 centimeter from the axis of rotation. So how does my equation look like now? So net torque, right? So I start with myself first. The basic equation for torque is RF, right? So applied load, which is my weight, is 50. That's my force, 9.81. And my R is 30. I have to convert this to SI unit. So this becomes 0.3. That is torque 1. So am I going, so let's say this is how it looks like. Am I going clockwise or anti-clockwise?
Clockwise.
I'm going clockwise, betul?
Clockwise.
Anti-clockwise. I'm moving this way, right? So it's anti-clockwise. So I am positive. And then this is Belle. So Belle is also positive. So that Belle is 55, 9.81. And his distance from the axis of rotation is 20 centimeter. So that is 0.2. Okay, and then your girl classmate Fika lah. Fika is at here plus 45, 9.81. And her distance from the axis of rotation is 0.1. What about Faiz? Faiz seorang nak duduk situ kan? So if we have an axis of rotation, Faiz datang kedebuk kat sini. Am I going clockwise or anti-clockwise? Faiz tengah duduk kat sini. Clockwise or anti-clockwise?
Clockwise.
Clockwise. So Faiz is a negative. Kan? Faiz is negative 57, 9.81. And his distance is 0.3. So that is how you calculate the total net.
Doktor,
Yep. Yep.
saya ternaik bila tiga-tiga orang tu duduk ke ataupun saya duduk semua orang tiga-tiga tu naik?
Awak duduk, tak tahu, saya tak tahu dia equate problem ni macam mana. Saya buat contoh je. Tapi from
Dia ikut
this,
soalan Faiz, jangan dia ikut real life.
okay, so kalau tengok
Tahu
soalan ni,
macam kan,
sabar.
yang 3 arrow warna merah ni?
Okay, so sekarang ni kalau kita kira net torque ni berapa? Dapat positif ke negatif? Come on guys, it's just
Positive.
131.45, doctor.
so it's positive, right? Kalau
Yes,
positif, clockwise ke anti-clockwise?
Clockwise.
Anti-clockwise.
Anti-clockwise. So maksudnya apa? Maksudnya Faiz tak berat lah.
Kalah Faiz.
Maksudnya, walaupun Faiz kat
going up,
sini,
right, doctor?
yeah, that is correct. It means that it's moving like this. So our weight over here, dia lagi berat lah daripada Faiz. So it's going this way. So the rotational motion is going anti-clockwise. Okay, so Faiz tak ada yang paling berat.
Yeay, Faiz tak
Kita kira-kira
berat.
ni semata-mata nak tengok direction orang tu. Oh. Sedangkan kita dah boleh tahu je.
Ya, betul. Tapi tak semua benda kita boleh tengok, kita tahu je. So dia cara yang senang untuk explain benda ni. Okay, kejap anak saya panggil. Kejap. 1 minute. Come back. Yeah. Nah, masuk.
Ringan Pika.
Masuk.
Apa Hakim?
Macam mana Pika boleh 45 ni?
Korang.
Bye.
Kalau contoh,
Doakan yang baik-baik kakak.
tak kisahlah aku lagi berat ke ataupun korang yang lagi tiga tu lagi berat ke. Bukankah kita memang akan ikut direction yang sama, dua-dua belah? Kalau sebelah sini clockwise, sebelah sini pun clockwise lah kan? Tak
Tak sayang.
Jadi Hakim, macam mana Hakim?
Aku tak, macam okay, sekarang ni tak kisahlah siapa lagi berat, kiri ke kanan. Tapi kalau kiri ke bawah, lepas tu yang kanan tu ke atas, maksudnya Tu sama direction
Okay.
lah kan?
Macam
Semua
ni.
sama direction.
Kau memang akan bergerak ke atas, tapi torque kau bertindak balas ke bawah.
Betul.
Betul,
Ya,
boleh
betul.
ke saya?
Oh.
Kau memang bergerak anti clockwise sekarang ni, tapi torque kau bertindak balas clockwise. Tapi torque kau tak cukup kuat untuk lawan torque diorang, sebab tu kau bergerak anti clockwise, tapi torque kau still bertindak balas clockwise.
Pilotok.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you,
Faham ke?
Mion.
Betul, boleh ke
Thank
saya
you, Mek On.
simpulkan kalau siapa yang duduk kat left side tu dia negatif, positif, dan siapa duduk kat right side tu dia negatif.
Maksudnya?
So maksudnya siapa yang duduk kat left side jongkang-jongkit tu dia akan pergi anti clockwise, siapa yang duduk dekat right side jongkang-jongkit dia akan pergi clockwise.
Tak.
Boleh saya simpulkan tu? Tak boleh.
Tak boleh. Dia kenapa nak buat negatif dengan positif Sebab sekarang ni bila kita kira-kira kita punya net torque, maksudnya torque untuk keseluruhan jongkang-jongkit ni positif. Maksudnya jongkang-jongkit tu akan bergerak ke lawan jam kan? Anti clockwise. Anti clockwise macam mana? Macam ni kan? Macam mana? Macam ni, sorry, ke bawah. Macam ni. So Faiz akan naik, orang lain semua akan turun. Tu direction dia. Tapi betul Mek An cakap tu, torque Faiz ke bawah. Torque saya dengan Bel dengan Fika pun ke bawah juga. Tapi the net, total torque tu menyebabkan rotation macam ni. Okay. Tu je.
Faham tak?
Kalau saya tukar positif negatif tu boleh tak? Means saya jadikan clockwise tu positif, anti clockwise tu negatif. Ke memang dah fix?
Memang dah fix untuk torque.
Alright, thank you.
Dia convention dia lah. Okay. Okay, so kita akan tengok example lain later. So the motion of a rigid body can be translational. No change in orientation. Maksudnya saya ada, mana? Saya tak ada benda yang bulat pula. Do I? Okay, I do. Mana gambar saya? Saya nak pin. Okay, so this is over here. Korang tengok sini. So this is me, tiger balm. So kalau translational, dia gerak macam ni. Tak ada rotation. Dia gerak straight je lah. Dia gerak straight je. And then you have rotational. Dia gerak macam ni. Tapi setempat. Dia pusing tapi setempat. Translational, ke depan. Rotational, setempat tapi berputar. And then you have combination, translational and rotational. So dia sambil berputar, sambil bergerak ke depan. Like your tires. Macam kereta punya tayar. Okay. So itu perbezaan antara translational dengan rotational. Now, a rigid body in equilibrium must not perform both translational and rotational motion. So benda yang in equilibrium, dia tak boleh berputar setempat, dia tak boleh bergerak ke kanan, ke kiri, ke atas, ke bawah. Tak boleh. Untuk semua kondisi rotational, translational kena kosong. So that is the condition. Where is my mouse? Oops. Jadi ni. Excuse me. Okay. So because of this condition, kita ada F net equals to 0. The first condition of our equilibrium is your net F equals to 0. And the second condition is your net torque equals to 0. Now, let's discuss what net force equals to 0 means. Kita dah belajar dah, tak apa, recap. It means when F equals to MA and F equals to 0, means your A is 0. When do we have acceleration equals to 0? It is when V equals to constant or V equals to 0. Okay, sama juga macam torque. When torque punya equation is, kita tak belajar lagi, but torque punya equation is I alpha and torque is equal to 0 when alpha is 0. So when does alpha become 0? When omega is constant and when omega is 0. These two conditions or. Okay. So torque kena 0, net force kena 0 for something to be in complete equilibrium. Kalau ada rotational tapi F net equals to 0, dia tetap tak equilibrium sebab dia berputar, tak equilibrium. Okay. The forces on a rigid body is similar to the forces that act on an object. Okay, dia cakap kat sini free body diagram is the same. The free body diagram untuk rotational and the free body diagram for a linear punya method, sama je method dia, kita punya free body diagram sama. The only difference is that the forces may not act at the center of the mass of the body. Okay, for example, tak cukup tempat, sekejap saya kecilkan dulu. For example, I have an incline. Last time in chapter 3, we had an incline and we said this incline was moving forward. I have an acceleration to the right. It's moving forward, which means that my free body diagram should look like this. This is my mg, this is my r, and my friction should be here, right? But for untuk rotational body, untuk benda yang rigid body ni, let's say I have a ladder, okay, and this surface of the ground is rough, this surface of the wall is smooth, this is rough, smooth, and the axis of rotation is over here. I have my free body diagram for this particular situation is the mg is here. I have r over here, that is where I have contact with the wall, right? So that is my R1. I have contact with the ground. So that's R2. So I have two R's now. And what do I have? R1, R2. Okay, I have friction because this is rough. And assuming kalau ladder jatuh, dia jatuh ke macam ni kan? Dia jatuh ke tepi macam tu. Kalau dia nak jatuh, dia akan jatuh ke sini. Which means untuk prevent dia jatuh, my friction should be here. Now, tengok perbezaan antara sini dengan sini. Kat sini, your free body diagram, all your forces were at the center. But for this diagram, your free body diagram, the forces act at different places. Everything is not at the center. Ada yang kat sini, ada yang kat ujung ni, ada yang kat tengah. So it's telling you, your free body diagram, sekarang, bila dah jadi panjang, you have to consider that your force might not act at the center sahaja. It can act at multiple places. Sebab apa? Torque depends on the length to the axis of rotation. You want to know the rotation? You have to calculate for the R. Right? And forces memberi kepada torque yang lain lah. Bila R pun lain-lain. Okay, kalau semua, let's say kita punya condition kat sini, semua force dekat center. Macam mana saya nak tulis R dia? Saya tak tahu axis of rotation memang tak ada lah kat sini kan. But let's say our axis of rotation is, macam mana nak bagi benda ni make sense tak boleh, benda ni memang tak boleh nak rotate pun. So tak boleh, saya tak boleh nak apply benda tu kat sini. So sini memang semua dekat center, kat sini memang semua bukan dekat center sebab kenapa? Memang macam ni. Kat sini axis of rotation, you have a reaction force, you have friction untuk lawan dia jatuh, and then lawan jatuh motion motion is here, then reaction here sebab dia bersentuh dengan dinding. Okay, so that is one example. Nanti kita akan go through more examples, don't worry. So here it's saying ada reaction, ada frictional, ada tension. We will also look into tension juga. Gravitational je yang akan act at the center mass of the rigid body. Itu memang confirm. Alright. So let's take a look at this situation. So ni saya, and this is Hakim. Okay, joget-joget. So, so saya punya load is 45, 9.81. 9.81 and load Hakim 50, let's say, don't know. Okay, so now what I'm interested is only the beam. I don't care about myself, I don't care about Hakim, I only care about the beam. What is the torque on the beam? So kalau saya punya free body diagram, saya ada mg, Say ada R, whatever, right? But now I'm not interested in myself. I only want to know what is the torque acting on the beam. So now the load that is acting on the beam is me. This is mg 45, 9.81, yada yada, you know that. And the force from Hakim, 50 times 9.81. And then here is your R, because this is the point that it touches the benda Allah tu lah, I don't know what it's called. And selalunya, commonly, the axis of rotation has R. The axis of rotation has R. Sebab dia mesti akan bersentuh dengan something to give it that rotation. Okay, so let's say I have a beam. Kalau saya terapung ke udara, how do I have the axis of rotation? Memang tak boleh lah. But if I paksikan kat sini, then yes, I can have rotation. If it is floating, I can't have any rotation. Rotation can be here, rotation can be here, it is everywhere. But if I have somewhere to stick on, now this guy will be my center point, and this is where I rotate. So that is my axis of rotation, and axis of rotation always have R most of the time. Right? Most of the time we will see that the axis of rotation has R. So your free body diagram, please include your R in your free body diagram at your axis of rotation. Okay. Faham ke kenapa kita tengok beam je?
Faham.
Faham That is why we don't have R over here. We don't have R over here because we are not talking about ourselves. We're talking about the beam. Yep.
Dr. Nat, let's say we have a beam and then it's suspended by a string at the axis of rotation. It doesn't have R, right? Then
Kejap, saya lukis. So you have a beam. Is it horizontal?
yeah, yes, doctor.
And you have a string that acts as your axis of rotation. Is it possible to have an axis of rotation dekat string? Possible ke? Tak kot. But there is a situation. Okay, kalau kita benci benda ni. Okay. So let's say there is a beam and saya bukan benci bell tau, saya cakap benci kat recovery ni. Okay, so this is your string and it rotates. It rotates with the string. It does not act as an axis of rotation, right? The swing. Saya nak tunjuk Okay, phone saya. Dia swing sekali dengan tali tu. So it's not axis of rotation, but the axis of rotation is here and it does not move. So now this is our axis of rotation. So now where's your R? It's here. It's somewhere at the angle. It depends on how you swing it. Your R is there. That's the point of contact, right? Again, I'm going to show you. This is the tali and this is the beam. I cannot say that the axis of rotation is at this cable. I cannot. Because why? It does not flip there. It does not. It's when I want to rotate it, I have to rotate it as a whole. But now, the axis of rotation is from my hand. And in most cases, that's a ceiling or something, right? So my hand acts as the axis of rotation, which means that I have contact here. And when I have contact, I will have R. And depending on how I rotate this thing, let's say it rotates, I don't know, this way. Okay, that's not clear. Let's say it's this way, right? This is my string, tension. The contact is here. That is also T. The contact is it can be at an angle. I don't know what the angle is, but that is not clear at all. So that is where your R is, somewhere here. R is somewhere there with a certain angle. Because why? I had to touch the cable. So when I touched it, there was contact. Somewhere with a certain angle. Okay, so that's like a real life scenario. Okay, but let's look at a more simpler scenario, such as this guy over here.
You, doctor.
All right, you're welcome. So here, who is this? Can we say it's Faiz? Okay, this is Faiz. Kerja jadi engineer. Okay, so Faiz is standing on this beam. It's very dangerous, but Faiz is a risk taker, so baguslah. And this beam has a load of 300 Newton. The weight, the weight bukan load. The weight of this beam is 300 Newton. What time is it? Okay, lagi 10 minit kita break. And Faiz punya load is 600 Newton. That is his weight, and that is considered as the load. This is considered as the weight of the beam. This is the load applied on the beam. Faiz is applying a certain load on the beam. I don't really care what happens to Faiz. I only care about the beam because I want this beam to rotate or not rotate. Okay? And then I have this tension, this cable. So tension always points towards the center. So this is the center of my cable. So here is where I point. Why is mine? Why is it so hard to draw? Yeah. Okay. So that is tension. If you are looking at this point, this is your tension. Okay. Your axis of rotation is here. Okay. So tali ni kalau dia kendur ataupun dia tegang, this is where the beam goes up or where the beam goes down. That is the axis of rotation. It can rotate upwards, it can rotate anti-clockwise, it can rotate clockwise. Okay, so that is your axis of rotation. Now, we have this free body diagram over here to your right. This is the weight of the beam. This is Faiz's weight. And this is your tension. It has an angle. And this is your R. And I told you before, the reaction force is always present at the axis of rotation. Not always lah, most of the time. Okay, but in all our examples, memang ada R dekat axis of rotation. So this one is R. And I don't know what my R punya angle is. Okay. So actually, it's kadang-kadang gambar ni, macam nak cakap, this R is arbitrary. Just label it like this so that you can solve for it later. I can write my R like this, then angle theta. I can write my angle like this, R, the theta. Doesn't matter. I just need it to be in my free body diagram so that I can solve for it in my equation. Okay, so lukislah however you want, but kena kat tempat yang dia bersentuh lah, which is here. Okay, that is where you have contact with the wall, right? Okay, so how do we draw? Okay, sempat. How do we write our torque equation? Remember, torque is RF. We need to know what is the length to the axis of rotation. This is your axis of rotation. And the total length of the beam is 5. We don't know what is the length of Faiz. Maybe 0.3. 0.3 apa? Maybe 1 lah. Kita letak 1. So this guy is 1 meter. And kat towards the hujung is 5. Okay, sama juga macam net torque tadi. Now our equation becomes, let's use a different color. Our net torque comes, okay, so what is the length to the axis of rotation of R? Can anyone tell me? Can anyone tell me what is the length of reaction force to the axis of rotation? No one?
0 meters.
0, yes. Which means that whatever force that you apply at the axis of rotation is useless to produce rotation. But if you want to include it in your equation, you can. So let's just do that. So R that is perpendicular to the beam is r sine theta. Okay, you always want your F to be perpendicular, right? So r sine theta times 0, which means that it is useless to produce rotation. Then you have phi is. Okay, before that, what is the direction of r if I am just entertaining myself despite it not producing torque? Kalau dia kat sini sikit, dia akan tolak ke atas. So kalau ke atas, it's anti-clockwise, so positive lah. So, and then phi is going down, it's going clockwise, right? So clockwise is negative 600. He's already perpendicular to the beam, and then his distance is 1 meter. And then this center of mass, the weight is minus 300. Oops. I need more space. 300 times, but 2.5, because it is at the half of the beam. Then we have tension. We always want the perpendicular component, T sine 53. And my beam that is pushing this way, axis of rotation is my finger. I'm pushing it this way. I am going anti-clockwise. So I have a positive T sine 53. And the length to the axis of rotation is 5. Okay. So this is just the equation of torque. If this beam, this whole thing, right, this whole thing does not move, it is not moving to the left, it is not moving to the right, it's not moving upwards, not moving downwards, it's not rotating, it's just static, right, like that, which means that your net torque is equal to 0. Okay, and you can solve for your r sine theta, t sine 53. Maybe we can do that later. Okay, let's have our break for 10 minutes, no, 12 minutes, come back at 3:10. Is that okay with everyone? Come back, 3:10. Okay ke? Kita nak break?
Boleh.
Okay. Ingat tak nak break dah? Sekejap. Stop dulu.
Dr. Nat.
Yep. Oh, sorry. Saya share balik. Yeah.
Sorry, doctor.
Okay. Is everyone back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Continue. Okay, so we learned previously that for a rigid body or an object, for it to be in equilibrium, your net force needs to be 0 and your torque needs to be 0 as well. So here, this guy is not rotating. It's also not moving to the right, not moving to the left, moving upwards or moving downwards, which means that the net force is equal to 0 and the net torque is also equal to 0. So using these two conditions, we can try to solve for r sine theta and also solve for t sine, we can solve for t lah basically. But we are not doing that because this is not a problem. Saya nak highlight lagi satu benda. Oh, tadi saya tak ingat siapa yang tanya. They asked me if we have a beam and the weight of the beam is, the mass of the beam is 10 kilograms, let's say, why do we label the weight at the center? Why do you label the weight at the center? Because for free body diagram, Yusof, come here. Budak ni. Okay, so for your free body diagram, kita approximate the weight to be at the center of the object. Oh my god, so busy. Sekejap
Comel lah doktor.
Terima kasih.
Dia belakang.
Okay, so here I label the center of mass, center as the total weight. Because why? Because we are approximating total weight for your free body diagram. So this means that at this point, mg is equal to 10 times 9.81. Bukan 1/2 mg. No, it's mg. Walaupun dekat center, tak payah bahagi 2. Use the entire weight because this is an approximation. I know in real life, your weight is distributed evenly, right? Okay, tapi kalau macam tu case dia, we have a lot of torque to consider and that's just too much work for approximation. So kita just assume, okay, whatever it is, the weight of an object is at the center. Okay, sebab eventually dia akan lebih kurang sama lah. Approximation ni selalunya lebih kurang sama. Not accurate, but approximately the same. Okay, so that is just what I wanted to highlight. Do not use half mg. Use mg at the center. Okay. Right, so next one. Okay, so this is a free body diagram of a person holding a bowling ball. So let's say I have, okay, look at my screen. Okay, so this is me. Macam mana saya nak buat tangan macam tu, susahnya. Okay, so this is me. For me to angkat this, whatever bomb this is, for me to angkat this, I am actually using the force from here. The axis of rotation is, axis of rotation is siku, right? My siku becomes the axis of rotation. So now, the force applied is by the muscle. This is muscle. And this is the load of the bowling ball, F load. And this is your axis of rotation, siku. Okay, it's here. I know it doesn't make sense why the R is like that. It's just like that. I don't know as how why. Okay. So this is, kalau diorang kasih tangan, hafal je lah dekat siku memang R dia macam tu. Okay, and then your F is applied by your muscle and you, whatever that you're holding becomes your F load. So you have two torques now. The torque from your muscle, torque 1. The torque from the bowling ball, torque 2. Which way do you want to move it? You want to move it clockwise or anti-clockwise? It's anti-clockwise, right? We're trying to lift it. Lift. So it's going
Doctor.
Anti-clockwise, yes. It's going anti-clockwise. So how do you make your net torque to be positive? Your net torque needs to be positive. So how do you do that? So kenalah adjust force yang kita apply with the length. So F1 times R1 plus F2 plus R2. Yeah, times R2. This guy is going clockwise, so this becomes a negative. Okay, so whatever this value be, if you want to lift it, you want to rotate it upwards or anti-clockwise, your net torque should be positive. That's how you use torque. Okay. So that's just a free body diagram. Kat sini, I suggest you to memorize that the axis of rotation punya R looks like this. Okay, yang ni and the muscle exerted by you is force like that. This part is easy. I don't think you should memorize that. And yang ni je lah yang kena ingat this force and this siku part, the elbow part. Okay.
Doctor, for R, right, the normal reaction, we can ignore it out of the equation because because the distance from the axis is 0, kan?
Correct. It doesn't give you any torque. But if they ask you to solve R, then you have to solve lah. Using your F net equals to 0 and net torque equals to 0. Faham tak?
Oh, okay, thank you, Doctor. Faham.
Okay, so here we have talked about reaction force, which usually is present when you have axis of rotation. Then frictional force to prevent motion, right? Or to prevent rotation. We have seen both cases. Ni ladder, motion pun ada macam kereta. Then tension of string pun kita dah tengok macam mana, and any other external forces such as the load of your body, the load of a bowling ball, etc. Okay, sketch the free body diagram. Choose a convenient 2D rectangular axis, your x and y, or it could be x and y, doesn't really matter, as long as you label what is the best way for you to solve it. And then apply the first condition of equilibrium, which is Fy equals to 0, Fx equals to 0, or Fnet equals to 0. Okay, Fnet equals to 0 ni apply untuk Fy dengan Fx both. Identify the axis of rotation. So we talked about this. Then apply the second condition of equilibrium, which is net torque equals to 0. Okay. Substitute the known values and solve for simultaneous equation. State your final answer. Do not forget units. Do not forget units because you will be deducted by 1 mark for each answer. Final answer. Okay. Let's talk about this this problem. Okay, a 20 kilogram flat light in a park. Flat light Dala ni. This is the thing. So this is 20 kilogram in a park is supported at the end of a horizontal beam of 3 kilogram mass. So this beam has a 3 kilogram mass. That is the mg. This dude also has mg. I will label this as capital M and G. A cable at an angle of 30 degrees. So this is the label. The angle. And this is your tension. Right? Okay. With the beam helps to support the light. Okay, so it says that it's not moving, right? It doesn't say that it's moving because obviously why would it move? It needs to be static because it's a light, right? And then one more thing, we have R because that is our axis of rotation. And if you didn't notice, this is where gambar ni tunjuk lah ada axis of rotation dia. So I will say we have R there, okay? And kenapa saya label R saya macam ni? Because we have seen a diagram like this before. Mana gambar tadi? Like this guy. Okay, lebih kurang. It looks like a flat light as well. So your R was like this, right? So let's label your R like that as well. Over here.
But this mom can help me.
No, I cannot help you. No, I cannot help you. Okay. Okay, so MG ni perpendicular. Okay, so this is MG. Tension, reaction, your axis of rotation is here. Okay, so that is your free body diagram. Am I missing anything? Do we have friction? No, we don't have friction. Do we have, what else? Tak ada dah. Okay, itu je. Find the tension in the cable and the horizontal and vertical forces exerted on the beam by the pole. So let's do this equation. Mula saya ajar, nanti next problem korang kena buat pula. So please pay attention, okay? So find tension and horizontal vertical forces. Let's do this in Word because that's easier for me. New document. Okay, so that is the diagram there. The question tells me that I should find the tension and the vertical and horizontal forces. Vertical. Fy je lah. Fy and Fx. Okay, so let's start. So this guy is not moving. So we know that the condition for this is 0. The torque is 0. The F net is also 0. So the easiest one I think to do right now is torque code. Do we have the length? Okay, we don't have length. Okay, we don't have length, which means that the length is just D. Let's label that as D. Okay, let's use a different color. Is everyone okay still? Are you guys?
Saya je ke atau slide ni dia memang start dekat situ?
Tak keluar tak?
Doctor, are you showing working?
Kejap.
Sebab
Tapi slide
working
tadi.
tak nampak.
Oh, okay, faham dah. Okay, it's not sharing. Sekejap, share screen. Okay. Nampak tak? Sekarang nampak kan? Nampak tak?
Nampak dah. Thank you,
Okay.
doctor.
Saya baik bagi tahu. Okay, so this guy is D. Okay, sebab dia punya, the length of the beam is not given. So I'm just going to say, okay, the length of the beam is D. So now, the easiest one for me to do is, I think is torque, because R goes through the center of the axis of rotation. So I can just eliminate that. So I'm going to do my torque equation first. So I write my condition, torque is equal to 0. What is acting on this beam? And what is the perpendicular forces? So here, the perpendicular force to this beam is T sine 30. Can the force that touches the angle becomes cosine. The force that does not touch the angle becomes sine. And R we can ignore because it goes through the axis of rotation. The capital MG has a length of D, and the weight of this floodlight is 20 times 9.81. So that is the weight. So let's label that here. Write that here. And the length is D. Am I going clockwise or anti-clockwise? So this is my B going
Clockwise.
down. Clockwise, right? So clockwise is negative. Okay. And then I have my T sine 30. Forgot to do that. T sine 30 is going upward, so it's going anti-clockwise. Okay, it's anti-clockwise, so it's a positive. And that is also D. Positive, eh? And then this guy, the weight of the beam. Berapa entah? Sekejap, saya check balik. The weight of the beam is 3 kilogram. So 3 kilogram going downward, so it's going clockwise. Going downward is negative. Clockwise. So that is 3 times 9.81, and the length is D over 2 because it is at the center. Okay, center means half lah, half of the length. Okay, so now this whole thing is equal to 0. Okay, let me rearrange this to solve for T. Okay, saya lukis elok dulu. 20, positive. 29 point, ya Allah, kejap. I need to close my door. Okay. Okay, 9.81. Okay, and then this is D. So I'm just rearranging. So positive 3, 9.81. D over 2. Tengok dah mengemuk dah. The T sine 30, I am making that as my subject. Ish. Okay, D. Right? What I can do is now I can potong-potong. Bring this D over here. So it becomes, the D is gone now. Okay, so I can solve for T, this whole thing divided by sine 30. So that becomes, I don't know. Can someone calculate that for me while I check up on my son with that? Masuk cepat. Okay, dah masuk cepat lah. Okay, tutup hai. Masuk cepat.
Kasih tadi.
No.
This
Go dulu. Sini. Okay, mama close. Bye-bye. Hey. Okay, so what's the answer? What is T? Anyone calculate? Did you guys get T yet?
To 1.83.
Apa? 4 to?
1.83.
0.83. Did everyone get this as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so T is 41.83. So now we have solved for torque. We have solved tension for using the torque equation. So now let's move on to our F net equals to 0. Okay, so let's insert page kejap. Oh no.
Dr. Nat,
Yep.
why isn't there a torque at the center of mass?
Why is there a torque at the?
At the center of the beam.
Sebab ada force. Kenapa tak ada torque pula? Remember equation torque is RF, right? Kalau we have force, then we always have torque if we have force and the length to the axis of rotation. And since we have this as our weight, and we have R, and we have torque.
Yeah,
But
doctor, so why don't we like T torque 1 plus torque 2?
did we not include it in our equation? We did. Ni 3, 9.81 D over 2. This is the weight of your beam.
Sorry, doctor, I misunderstood. Thank you, doctor.
Okay. Yep.
Does it mean that when there is any force or weight applied, there must be a torque?
Oh, tak dengar langsung. Lagi sekali, kuatkan sikit suara.
Does it mean that when there is any force or weight, so there must be a torque?
If there is any force and length, there must be a torque. Betul?
Alright, thank you, Doctor.
Provided ada axis of rotation lah. Kalau you have a calculator and it's glued to the wall, there's no axis of rotation, right? Glue tu tak boleh rotate. So in that case, you apply as much force, it does not rotate. So RF only works if you have a center axis of rotation. Okay, ada hinge. Kalau tak ada hinge, it does not rotate. So in that case, your RF is useless. You're applying force that does not go anywhere. Does not rotate the object lah, okay? But almost always when you have axis of rotation, you have force and you have length to the axis of rotation, confirm ada rotation, torque, okay? Rotational motion is torque. Okay, so let's do the second one. F net equals to 0 or Fy equals to 0 and Fx equals to 0. So what is acting in the y direction? We have t sine 30. And in the x direction, I have t cosine 30. In the x direction, in the y direction, I have mg going down. And in the y direction, I have small mg going down. And this part, I have r sine theta, provided that the angle is theta here. And this guy is r cosine theta. Okay, so now I just need to put it into my equation. Let's do our Fy first. Doesn't matter which one first. So r sine theta is going upward means that I have positive 1. And then I have negative mg. I don't have to resolve it. It is already in my y direction. And I have negative capital Mg. And I also have t sine 30, positive t sine 30. I know what my t is. I know what my small mg and my capital Mg is. So let me just substitute that first. Okay, minus 3, 9.81 minus 20, 9.81 plus t was 421.83. Okay, and sine 30. Okay, so I can solve for r sine theta, which is something something. I don't know. Let me calculate that really quickly. Okay, so 3 times 9.81 plus 20 times 9.81 minus 421.83 times sine 30. So that is 40.72. The unit is Newton because it's a force, right? Kalau torque tadi, the unit is Newton meter. Because why? Torque is RF. Okay, so I don't know what my angle is. I still don't know. I just solved for r sine theta, but that's okay. Let's proceed. Next, I will solve for my fx. What is in my x direction? First, I write the condition. Always write your condition. Second, what is in your free body diagram? You have r cosine theta to the right. So I'm going to say that is a positive, right? And then my t cosine 30 is negative. What else? Mg does not have x component. Capital Mg does not have x component. So that is it. So these two things is equal to 0, which means that my r cosine theta is equal to yeah, apa tadi? 4 to hello. Tak boleh lukis pula. What is happening? Okay, please. All right, let's wait. 421.83, that is my t, right? Kita dah solve for t tadi. And cosine 30. So that is equal to
365.32.
0.32 Betul? Okay, thank you. That is in Newton. Thank you. So it told you to find what are the forces in the x and what is the forces in the y. So this is how you do it lah. Okay. So here they didn't ask you to solve for r. So what you did was you solve for r in the y direction and you solve for r in the x direction. Pun boleh. However, if the question asks you, find the magnitude of r and the direction of r, maksudnya you have to find the angle, right? So how do you do that? Okay, let's figure that out. Insert page break. Let's do it here. Excuse me. So kita dah tahu, kenapa tak boleh? Dia betul-betul selalu macam ni. Kalau lama sangat kelas, macam give up. Sekejap Let's give it some time.
Dr. Nat, if we are given r sin theta and r cos theta macam kita dapat tadi, then can we square both values and add them together and then root it back?
Yes, boleh.
Macam cari resultant.
Yep, betul.
Oh,
Sama je.
thank you,
So
Dr.
because r, x is r cosine theta and r in the y direction is r sine theta. And this is exactly what you need to find the magnitude, right? So sama juga, betul? That is right. That is your magnitude for R. Excuse me. And then your angle, sama juga, tangent theta is equal to R sine theta. Oopsie. I don't want you to translate. Theta, R cosine theta, whatever the value is, it doesn't matter. But nanti akan potong R ni. Tapi kena bubuh ni lah, kena bubuh value. Okay, sepatutnya tak boleh potong lah sebab dah ada value. Okay, let me write that properly. So, hello. Cilam ni. Ish. That one give me a few seconds. I think because it's overheating, is it not? It's not. Okay. So R sine theta, kita dah solve tadi, was 14.72, right? 14.72. And this guy was 365.32. Okay, so this is equal to tangent theta. To solve for theta, we just have to buat macam biasa lah. Inverse tangent. 2.3 eh? Okay. Hey. This thing is on. Thank you. Okay. So that is how you do it. So R, if they ask you to solve for R is something something Newton. Always include your units. Then the angle for the R is 2.3 from the x-axis, because your equation always refers to the x-axis. Okay, this type of, to solving for theta, it refers to the x-axis. Yeah, kenapa? You want to do land? Cak man? Duduk land kat sana. Okay, I am back. Is there any questions related to this problem? Is everyone okay with this one?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Since value of theta is so small, then why isn't it negligible? Is
Why
it
is it
meant
not
accurate?
negligible? I don't know, because if they ask you to solve for it, you still have to solve for it as negligible as it is. Okay, kena jugalah. Ini tak boleh, kita tak boleh nak approximate the equation. Because it's not an equation, it's a value.
Thank you, doctor.
Okay. Okay, so let's move on. Berapa minit lagi tinggal? I can't see the time. Oh, 15 minutes to go. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I told you before that we have not learned about the equation for torque except for RF, right? There's another equation for torque, which is I alpha. And I told you torque is the equivalent for, bukan equivalent, dia macam, it's not equivalent, but you can say it's like interchangeable. Kalau dekat angular world, it's torque. In the linear world, it's called force. But they are not the same thing, okay? Definitely not. So F equals to MA, right? And torque is equal to I alpha. Alpha is interchangeable with A, and I is the the angular quantity for mass. in the angular world. So we have not learned about I yet. It is called moment of inertia. Okay, so I, the equivalent for mass in the angular world is called moment of inertia. Inertia is related to mass, so that I just don't know how to tell you how to memorize it, but itu je lah. Inertia is always related to mass. The bigger your mass, the bigger the inertia. So remember, moment of inertia means about mass in the angular world. So how do we get I alpha? Okay, so torque equals to RF and F equals to MA. So we substitute MA over here, and we know that A equals to R omega. So I substitute this equation here, okay, into my A.
I'm sorry for interrupting, doctor, but the screen's not presenting.
Sorry. Stop sharing. Alah, ruginya. Banyak korang tak nampak pun. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to repeat myself. Okay. Okay. So I told you that torque is, tadi saya lukis-lukis tak keluar lah. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so torque is equivalent to force in the linear world. And I told you F equals to MA, and there is another equation to define torque, which is I alpha. Okay, aside from RF, we also have I alpha. Sama juga macam force. Force pun banyak equation. Equation yang paling famous is MA, right? So torque punya equation yang paling famous, dua-dua. So both are equally important. So RF is important, I alpha is important as well. So alpha is the equivalent to acceleration in the linear world, and I is the equivalent to mass in the linear world. What is I? I is the moment of inertia. Okay, that's just its name. And what is I? I is typically mr squared. Okay, so how do we know I equals to mr squared? So look at this equation, F equals to MA. I'm substituting F equals to MA. So F is MA here. I know A is actually R alpha. So I substitute acceleration with R alpha. So now I have RM R alpha. And now I have MR squared alpha. And I told you torque is equal to I alpha, which is right here. And so I is equal to mr squared. Okay, the moment of inertia is mr squared. Itu je. Okay. So that's a new term for you to memorize. I. So I, moment of inertia, is the equivalent to mass in the angular world. However, there's a trick to it. I is dependent on shape. Dependent on shape. So despite it having the same mass, if the shape is different, the moment of inertia is also different. In your module book on page 98, you have this distinction. Okay, so this is the moment of inertia for several objects. So let's say this hoop is 2 kilogram and this thin hoop is also 2 kilogram. The mass is the same. However, the moment of inertia for these two objects are different because the axis of rotation is different. Here, dia dekat macam ni lah rupa dia, axis of rotation is here, whereas here the axis of rotation is at the center. Okay, macam ni, macam tu. So because of the axis of rotation, because of its shape, it can change the moment of inertia. So here the moment of inertia I is equal to mr squared. When the axis of rotation changes, it becomes 1/2 mr squared plus 1/12 mass times width, the width of the thin hoop squared. Okay, so here is 2 kilogram of cylinder as well, but the shape is different. So the I is also different. It's 1/2 mr squared. So you can say this whole object, all these objects have the same mass, but because they have the different axis of rotation, they have different shape, their eyes are different. Their moment of inertia is different. And you have to memorize the equation. That's the sad part of it. Okay, and there is another 4. This is for a sphere. This is a long uniform rod where the axis of rotation is through its center. And this is the same rod, but the axis of rotation is kat ujung. Ini kat tengah, ujung. Then you have a rectangular thin plate where the axis at the center. So that is your moment of inertia. So all of this, they can have the same mass, but their moment of inertia cannot be the same. They have different shape, they have different axis of rotation, cannot be the same. Okay, it can't. Okay, let's go back to this part. So we talked about moment of inertia. Should I stop here? Kejap, let me see apa yang senang untuk cerita. Okay, so let's say we have we have a styrofoam. Okay, I have a styrofoam that looks like a circle. Styrofoam kan? Styrofoam kan? Benda lah tu kan? Yang ada biji-biji tu kan? So styrofoam saya ni made up of many styrofoam beads. Right? And all these beads have a certain mass. And they all have a certain radius from the axis of rotation. So this is R1, this is R2, this is R3. I don't know, maybe it's the same, maybe it's different. So to calculate the torque of the entire particle, of all the particles of that particular circular cylinder, what I do is I total up the net torque, the net moment of inertia. This is I, net I, and tutup pintu. And then since if I'm rotating this stuff, everything moves at the same alpha. I can just say the alpha is constant for everyone, it's the same for everyone. And I have multiple beads, right? Multiple styrofoam beads. So I have to add all of these beads that is moving at a particular alpha. So this gives me net I alpha, which gives me the net torque. And this is ridiculous to calculate, right? It's ridiculous to calculate if you are calculating for each particle. It's just, I don't like to do things like that. It's a very waste of time. So what physicists did was they approximated. So this is how you get this equation. They said, okay, so let's just approximate all the particles in a cylinder. The moment of inertia is 1/2 mr squared. Doesn't matter if you have 1,000 beads. Doesn't matter if you have 1 million beads in your cylinder. As long as you know what is the radius and what is the mass, you will know what is the moment of inertia. So this is the function of moment of inertia. Okay, so that you don't have to calculate for each atom. Okay, so that is it for this class. Yep.
Doctor, how can a solid cylinder have a moment of inertia half of the thin hoop? Because it has half mr squared, but the thin hoop has mr squared. So
dia bukan pakai geometry, dia pakai integration. I'm not an expert on that. Maybe you can Google how to integrate a 3D object. Integrate the moment of inertia. Okay, ada dia punya math. It's very complicated. I learned that when I was in degree, but it's not for me.
Doctor, so for our level, for moment of inertia, we're just supposed to hafal it lah.
Yeah.
How it's derived is
No,
degree.
you don't have to know. You don't have to know how it's derived. You just have to know the shape and what is the moment of inertia.
Doctor, can you show the next slide for this?
This one? I think it's in your book tau. It's in your book, page 98.
In our module, it's only from A to G, tapi in here, there is an extra one, which I think, So, do we follow the module one?
Yes, kalau dia tak ada dalam module, then it's fair game. Dia tak akan masuk dalam test. So baguslah, you only have 4. Bagus, I'm happy about that. Oh, so you have A to G, betul. You don't have the rectangular,
also don't have D.
You don't have the D, the hollow cylinder ada. C ada. Oh, B tak ada. Mana hilang pergi B. Okay, baguslah. You have less to memorize. I will highlight this to my team, to my unit. Because okay.
No, we have 6.
Apa dia?
Maksudnya we have 6 to memorize lah kan, Doktor?
1, 2,
A,
3, 4, 5,
C until
6.
G.
I will ask back my unit nanti. Kita orang saya confirmkan balik. Okay, which one you have to memorize. But this chapter is for finals, eh? Okay, it's not for your test.
Doctor, I have a question about the test. Because based on my experience doing web assign, kan, some questions under chapter 6 we can solve it. I find it much easier to use the kinematic equation from chapter 7. So in our test, it's just until chapter. Oh, hello, anak doktor. Then maksudnya for our test, even though it's until chapter 6, are we allowed to use equations from chapter 7?
Chapter 6 or 4 boleh? Boleh. Sebab kinematik tu dekat chapter 2 kan? Kinematik kita belajar chapter berapa? Chapter 3 lah. Boleh?
Chapter 7, Doctor. The
No,
rotation one.
kinematik yang linear. Yang linear kat chapter berapa?
Chapter 3, Doctor.
Boleh, yes. Sebab benda tu interchangeable. Ya Allah, budak ni. Dah duduk pergi jauh sikit. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you, Doctor.
What's
Welcome.
dino? What's dino?
Dino. Any other questions before we end class?
Doctor, for the word assign, do the word assign change the questions? Because last week I go to my word assign and see my previous assignment. It shows that I haven't completed, but actually I completed, so I confused about word assign at the question after we submit assignment.
You're saying you completed your web assign, but it says you did not complete it yet. Macam tu ke?
Yes, and then in my draft there is only macam 10 questions, but in the web assign dia ada 15 questions. So macam confused mengapa dia akan tambah sangat soalan sendiri.
Oh, okay. Can you WhatsApp me about your problem? Tunjuk saya gambar benda tu. Okay, you WhatsApp me. Nanti saya check balik awak punya status. Okay. Any other question selain daripada tu? Okay, Okay, I hope everyone's okay. Okay, so that's it for class. I'll see you on Thursday. Okay, bye.
Thank you, Doctor.
Bye.
Bye. Jom tangkap gambar nak. Semua orang dah keluar dah. Tak apalah. Later. Tomorrow. Okay, bye. Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you, Doctor.
Welcome.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thank you, Doctor.
Welcome. Welcome.